So once we get over the shock and disappointment of it not quite being lunchtime,
It's true.
let me wait for our wonderful panelists to sit down and just begin by thanking Clarion and Joe for the continued work of the forum, for Ambassador John Lang and the members of the committee who put this terrific agenda together, and Rachel and her team for doing what they always do so well and making everything look smooth. It's my great privilege. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, my name is Simon Bland. I work for UNAIDS in New York. It's my great privilege to be here to moderate the panel session just before lunch on leveraging the private sector core competencies. We're going to... Is it not this? Okay, is that a bit better? I think. Let me try and hold it as Chris did. Is that better? All right, good, thanks. My voice usually carries quite well. We've got a large panel here. We're going to do this in two parts. We're going to have two speakers talking about public-private partnerships and the health system in Kenya, and then after about 40 minutes we'll shift to the continent of South America, go to Brazil, and think about public-private partnerships there around road safety and around alcohol use, and also touch on issues of conflict of interest. So just a couple of words by way of introduction. In September 2015, when 193 countries adopted Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, the narrative was it will take all stakeholders, public, private, international and domestic. And the vast majority of people, I think, when they heard private sector, thought money. That's what they thought the private sector was about. And still today, I think we have real challenges of pockets of mistrust, pockets of anxiety, and pockets of positive animosity towards the private sector. So when we think about public-private partnerships, it's not a slam dunk where everybody's on the same page. And I think the high-level meeting on the 27th of September on NCDs this year is going to be a very interesting test case, because there are real challenges around NCDs, around food, around other industries in that agenda. Joe, yesterday you introduced the session talking about the private sector beyond finance. You talked about intellectual know-how, about networks, about innovations, about technology, about supply chains. Ikwo, you talked about technical, managerial and financial competencies. Debbie Burke said, don't bring your foundations. This forum has talked in the past about the role and continuum between philanthropy, corporate social responsibility, shared value creation, particularly with the interests of sustainability, scalability, and I'd add to that equity. The transitions we're talking about are not happening in a vacuum, and they're happening in a rapidly changing world. We heard from Tim yesterday about demography. We heard about shifting disease burdens. But I'd add to that challenges to globalization. We see that in some of the conversations around trade. Clear challenges to multilateralism, challenges to the United Nations. Really, the SDGs and this challenge has stimulated Secretary General Antonio Guterres to embark on perhaps the most ambitious reform in the UN for decades. I don't think Sid's in the room anymore, but we heard Peter Sands talking this morning about the pivotal role, an important role that resident coordinators in their new role can play, increasingly in providing platforms for public-private conversations and development of partnerships. We've seen attacks on official development assistance in my own country, protecting that 0.7. One of very few countries that have lived up to that is under constant threat and attack. We live in a rapidly changing world with exponential innovations. Chris, it's good to know what we don't know from your session, but we really can't predict the future because of this exponential pace of change. What does the future of work, what does the future of food, what does the future of health and education, AI and AGI and augmented reality mean? What are the benefits to that? But what are the likely negative implications that are possible for inequality? And we have growing resistance, AMR, antimicrobial resistance, and the need for a multi-sectoral approach to deal with the food systems and agriculture and industry and animal health and human health. So we have a combination of challenges there that are all affecting that transition. What we do know is all these challenges are going to take multi-stakeholder approaches. They're all going to take multi-stakeholder approaches. And while PPPs are no protection from stupidity, that's one of my takeaways from the session, when done done well, we believe and we know, and we have increasing empirical evidence over a decade or more now, that they generate and deliver better outcomes.